From the National Institute of Justice's Expert Systems Testbed Project Series, the following presentation is the Technical Capabilities, Concordant Study, and Examples. The NIJ Expert System Testbed Project, commonly referred to as the NEST Project, was launched as a technical assistance project to the forensic DNA community in May of 2005. The goals of the project are to evaluate the commercially available expert systems designed for the technical review of single-source data produced by forensic DNA laboratories, and to report the results to the forensic DNA community. Your presenter is Rhonda Roby, a technical consultant for the NIJ.
The study reports on the findings of the NIJ's Expert Systems Testbed Project Team, established by the National Institute of Justice's Office of Science and Technology, to evaluate the commercially available expert systems designed for use by forensic DNA laboratories. These expert systems are an additional tool for the forensic DNA data banking community. In the past 6 years, NIJ has awarded over $75 million to process convicted offender samples. In this, over 2.6 million samples have been processed, which have resulted in over 6,000 hits in forensic cases in this nation. However, the bottleneck today is that analysis is not yet complete for all of these samples. We have introduced in the forensic community high-throughput systems. We have introduced systems for punching the blood-stained cards. We have introduced robotic systems for extraction and amplification of our DNA samples. Recently, the DNA community has been introduced with robotics for quantitating DNA, and also we have been introduced with multi-capillary instrumentation. With respect to chemistry, the forensic community can now amplify all required 13 CODIS loci in one single amplification. Years ago, we had to use 2 or more kits to amplify the DNA and get all 13 CODIS loci. The NEST project was focused on evaluating the ability of commercially available expert systems as a mechanism for rapid, accurate technical review of convicted offender single-source DNA samples for the eventual upload into the National DNA Index System, or INDES. The goal of the NEST project was to evaluate, not validate, each of the expert systems. Moreover, the NEST project team that conducted this study comprised of not only leaders in the field of forensic sciences, but also users of the different expert systems. This presentation is designed to be informative and non-biased. It is designed to provide the information that the NEST project team has summarized in its evaluation of these expert systems. The primary purpose of the study is to provide the forensic community with an objective perspective on available technology and expert system software for the analysis of single-source convicted offender samples for accurate review. One additional purpose of this study is to educate the managers and scientists in the forensic community and to provide sufficient information so each one is a more informed consumer of the software systems. We believe this extensive study will be of value to those choosing an expert system for their laboratory. In May 2005, the NEST project team met to define what an expert system is. Expert systems are used in many different disciplines throughout the scientific community. And in these different disciplines, people have different definitions of an expert system. We adopted the definition in the INDES document, Appendix B, for the guidelines for submitting requests for approval of an expert system for review of offender samples, plus we added additional scope. The definition of an expert system, as provided in Appendix B, is a software program or a set of software programs. Further, an expert system provides many functions without human intervention. Some of these functions include identifies the peaks in those bands, assigns alleles or allele calls, it ensures data meet laboratory-defined criteria, describes the rationale behind the decisions, and it makes no incorrect calls. For the additional scope provided by the NEST project team, we determined that the software needed to be publicly available for purchase, had to be configurable off-the-shelf software, completely housed in the laboratory facilities, and that no programming knowledge was needed to use the software package. These expert systems all review the single-source data in a high-throughput manner. They allow the user of the expert systems to focus on those samples that have not met laboratory-defined criteria, such as peak height and peak height ratio. We'll be discussing these details and these criteria much later in the presentation. Expert systems point the user of the software to the samples that have not met these criteria. They fire different flags that indicate the need for the scientist to review that particular sample. Further, the samples that pass the laboratory-defined criteria do not require human review. The 3 expert systems that met the definition and the scope that we determined at the time in June 2005 were GeneMapper ID, FSSI Cubed, and TrueAllele System 2. We are aware that more expert systems are available today and that more expert systems may become available in the future. But for the purpose of this presentation, we will be focusing on these 3 expert systems that we conducted a thorough evaluation on. GeneMapper ID is an expert system provided by Applied Biosystems. GeneMapper ID is a software program that can be installed by the user in their laboratory facilities. When you purchase GeneMapper ID, you're not purchasing any hardware. They provide you with the hardware requirements to use this software, and they provide you with those minimum requirements. Once you have those minimum requirements, you can load the software yourself. GeneMapper ID is quite intuitive. The training that is provided with respect to GeneMapper ID can either be web-based, or they have technical application specialists that will come to your laboratory, or you can go to their facility for company on-site training. A process that we're going to be speaking of a little bit later is the optimization of the software with your data in your laboratory. With respect to the optimization with GeneMapper ID, this is a function that is performed by the laboratory themselves. For FSSI Cubed, it's a software package that is provided by the Promega Corporation. FSSI Cubed is a set of software programs. In order to use FSSI Cubed, and what I mean here is that you need to use another software program to provide peak height, peak area, and base pair size to upload into FSSI Cubed. In the evaluation that we performed in the past year, we looked at FSSI Cubed in association with GeneMapper ID. FSSI Cubed is a software program that can be installed by the user themselves. The minimum hardware requirements are provided to the user, but the hardware is not part of the purchase of the software. The software is quite intuitive, and training can be provided on-site, or you can attend on-site training at their facilities. Optimization of FSSI Cubed is performed by the user. However, in contrast to these 2 expert systems, TrueAllele System 2 is software that is installed by the manufacturer. When you purchase the software, you also purchase the hardware that is required with the use of this software. Training is performed at the company, and optimization is performed by the company. The evaluation of expert systems summarized in this presentation clearly demonstrates that GeneMapper ID, FSSI Cubed, and TrueAllele System 2 all produce accurate allele calling and reliable rule firings. However, senior management and analysts should recognize that each of the vendors offer different products and services when purchasing an expert system. Additionally, the staff of different crime laboratories has different needs. The evaluation of expert systems summarized in this presentation clearly demonstrates that GeneMapper ID, FSSI Cubed, and TrueAllele System 2 all produce accurate allele calling and reliable rule firings. However, senior management and analysts should recognize that each of the vendors offer different products and services when purchasing an expert system. Additionally, the staff of the different crime laboratories has different needs. In this section of the presentation, we are looking at the different questions that you need to consider when purchasing an expert system. Purchasing an expert system is an important long-term decision. You need to consider things such as throughput needs, human resources, your IT support, your budget, your quality assurance, quality control program, your management or the structure of your agency, the vendors, and the training provided by each of the vendors. There's a list of questions that we have summarized and we provide in our report, which can be found on dna.gov. But for an example of some of the questions that we ask you to consider, for throughput needs, what is the number of samples that you process in your laboratory per year? With respect to human resources, how many analysts do you have on your staff for processing single-source samples? Do you have a team of 2 or do you have a team of 20? With respect to IT support, do you have information technology support specifically for the DNA laboratory? In your budget, do you have the budget to purchase all 3 of these expert systems, or is one expert system within the budget and another is not? For QA/QC program, would you like to have features in your expert system to help identify quality control problems? In your management and your structure of your agency, will your quality assurance manager be planning on using the different features in the expert system? Or do you have a preferred vendor that you enjoy working with? And with respect to training, do you prefer training at your laboratory facilities or training at the vendor site? All of these questions are important in considering which expert system you choose for your laboratory. We hope that this has provided you with an overview of the NIJ Expert System Testbed Project and the definition we use for an expert system, as well as questions to consider when purchasing an expert system for your laboratory. In the next section, we will present examples of rules that have fired from each of the expert systems. For more information on the NEST project, please refer to the website dna.gov. Thank you.
The content of this podcast was funded by the National Institute of Justice, which is part of the Office of Justice programs within the U.S. Department of Justice. The National Institute of Justice, or NIJ, is the research, development, and evaluation arm of the U.S. Department of Justice. NIJ has numerous programs that support state and local crime laboratories across the country.